In my thinking, or I think it's more or less clear, art addresses our perception. In other way around, I would say artists as composers, we do something with the perception, we work on the perception. And not just on the perception, this might be also indicated by the title on our, what the German word means, Empfindung, so sensations, and in another way also for sensations. Why is the perception so important for us humans? Because it's the, let's say, our link to something that we call the outside. Yeah? The outside is not just the world, it's also our self sensation, so everything that is then projected in a way for us that we assume to have a kind of, that we perceive it. Yeah? And what art does is that this kind of perception is centered in one tiny specific, either artwork, music. Yeah. There, as you know, there are some arts who do focus on just one sense, and there are arts who focus maybe on other sense. So when we compose, or this is the idea, or this is the what I try to do, to start the composition from the point where we are perceiving. So everything is invented out of perception. It means that I have to analyze or have a quite clear understanding for me, and it's also of course based on various scientific research, etc. Yeah? What perception might be. Yeah? As you know, perception in times of history was not always the same, but maybe I can present you for the moment some kind of an understanding how I understand perception, and with all then the specifics that are necessary for a kind of compositional approach, techniques and categories. Yeah? And I'm now just talking about sound, because it's easier. I have maybe it's the same for visual aspects, I don't know. When we perceive a sound, what happens? Huh? We perceive the sound, and at the same time we project this sound on our total environment that we have, so on all our sensual modals. Huh? So a sound is high. No, it's not high. The highness is a projection on our spatial environment. Yeah? This high sound might be sharp or piercing. No, it's not. But it's a projection on something that might touch our skin or maybe our gustative phenomenon. Yeah? It might be rough, it might be, and now we can add a lot of different modalities how our perception is done. So I have one input, and this input is, as I said, it's space, it's tactility, and I will add some more. Yeah? So it's projected on our whole, let's say, perceptive system. Yeah? That means that a sound is never a sound. It's always the whole environment, how we perceive this, yeah, and how we touch something, and this, then there is a sound. I make the sound like this, okay, and that means if this is like this, yeah, and there is good proof that it is like this. In the last 40 years, neurology had a quite deep research on this. If it is like this, we see that a sound is never what is just a sound, but it is all what is then on modalities. So it means we need to learn our modalities. This is, I think, clear. Yeah? No baby sees, but it learns to see. No baby hears, etc., etc. So we learn all these modalities, and this learning factor is at first a training, and then it's something that we call relations. Yeah? So when we get an input, we immediately make relations on all the modalities that we are capable of. Yeah, there are biological constraints, that's clear, but they are given. We won't change anything on our biological, well, I will not change anything on the biological constraints, but these are the two main things. Yeah? So, if we go there, we have relations. Yeah? And these relations are not pure, they are not given, they are not, there is no angel or something who gives us, but they are trained by the environment and by the society we live in. That means that every sound, whatever it is perceived at first as a projection on our total body, and at second within the constraints, the hierarchies of a society and of a surrounding we live in. Yeah? This is, at first, of course, our possibility. And that's the way how we understand sound, pictures, everything. Yeah? So you can imagine how complex then an understanding of any given element is, because it's at the same time, and that's real time. Yeah? It's real time projected on all our senses, and then by this kind of synesthesia, we understand this sound. Yeah? And there is something before this understanding, because we need these relations. And that's also, as you know, we humans, we need quite a long time until we have a kind of understanding of the inputs from an output, that we can really have a knowledge, or also a physical knowledge out of it. Yeah? So, and now, as we have arts, yeah, there are three things. Training, I may write it like this. Yeah? So there are three things in order to focus or to thematize perception. At first, of course, the input. At second, the relations that are given with our let's say, with all what we have with the modalities, and the training. Yeah? Of course, now I can decide, and that's an aesthetic, that I decide if I want to fulfill all the regularities that we have here, or if I want to do something else. Yeah? For me, there is no question, because in order to get a knowledge about all this, I have to do something else. We do not perceive anything if there is not something else which is deviant. Yeah? We need the deviance necessarily to have a notion of something. Yeah? So blue is just there because there is red and green and all the other colors. Yeah? We do not have any specific, let's say, perception of the air that we breathe unless there is a specific changement in the air, a smell, or what my physics professor always said, and I quoted it sometimes because I like it so much, if suddenly all the air is gathering in the corner there, which is of course not possible because of I think that's the third sentence of gases, I'm not really sure, yeah? Right, that's it. So, but then, if this deviancy would occur, we would necessarily have a very clear perception of air, also of non-air. Yeah, that's clear. Yeah? So we have to then construct, work on, do something that things getting deviant. Yeah? Otherwise, we have not really this, what I assume we might have constructed for these terms of arts, that we really have a notion of what are we capable about, what our perception is, and as well then all the other things like our self-consciousness, our body, etc. Yeah? So let's go just quickly back to those modalities, because from these modalities on, I can start to develop a compositional technique. There might be space, might be tactility. There are some others that are very important, which maybe you have heard that are a big part of my work. There is one which is called semantics. Yeah? So by these relations we build semantics. Yeah? And at least in my thinking, there is no sound which is not full, overfull, explosively full of presetted semantics. Yeah? And then also, if you think about special environments, of course we have the environmental modality. Yeah? I'm now talking about the cultural ones. As you know, a violin is not just a violin, but also gives us the information of a certain environmental semantics, and of course where it is settled to. Yeah? And environment also, just for you as examples, we all know how a restaurant sounds, how a wood sound, no, not wood, a forest sounds, how airport sounds, etc. Yeah? We even know how contemporary music sounds, because that's also as well a cultural, an environmental and a semantic setting. So as you see, I can also put here the culture. These modalities are of course all intertwined. They are not separated. We don't have, we don't have them in different shelves. They are all intertwined, but in order to talk about it, I have to separate them. Yeah? Of course there is space, tactility, semantics. Maybe within the time I will find some others. Yeah. Okay, and this projection is then, the synesthesia is what, and maybe some of you have read the essay that I wrote, understanding in the listening. Yeah? Because all we hear is then a synesthesia of these relations, and you can imagine how complex it is, because now I'm just talking about one single phenomena which is which we hear. Okay, and the second thing is, in order to do this we need the training. So we do not perceive, but we have a well-trained perception. Yeah? And it's also very well-tempered. Yeah? It's a well-tempered, well-trained perception that we have, and with which we perceive everything. And not just perceive everything, but I also have to go one step further. I hope that for you this kind of term in German, it's Empfindung, which might be a little broader than the English one, I'm not sure. Yeah? The English term is sensation, so that every input, every sound, not just is then a kind of a modality of perception, but also leaves traces of what we call sensation. And also these sensations, yeah, are trained. Yeah? We learn them in the long process of culturalization, of growing up, that is also dependent on where we grow up, etc., etc. Also, so, and this is then also connected to the piece, the most intimate sensations that we might have, the sensations of ourselves, are then, by mirroring the outside and getting information from the outside, are trained. Which, of course, then, we will talk about this maybe a little later, means a lot what this kind of, I usually tend not to say subject or individual, because I'm burning my fingers with philosophers with this. So this is why I say I, yeah. But you know what I mean. I'm not using the terms in any kind of philosophical language, school or something like. Yeah, I'm not a philosopher. What this I means, if I am a well-trained perceiver, getting a well-trained or having sensations that I'm then projecting in a well-trained way, and the very next step is that even our emotions are well-trained. So even the emotions that we think that we have are trained within our culture, within our setup. Yeah? I will give you some provings for this later. Yeah? And though I have to react on this, so And then the most important thing is how to get this training, get rid of the training, is this possible? Or to make something that is sufficiently deviant so that the training that we have, that we all have in our ears, is then maybe as overwritten like in a palimpsest or in a thing like this. So the training will always be there because it's the possibility. That's our these are our possibilities, and problematic. This is the problematic thing. Also our constraints. Yeah, and I think, and this is maybe, maybe one has always to make his own or her own ideas why this kind of art or the thing that we do is necessary. Maybe this is something that is that I found for me. Maybe we found art, this mankind, humans found art because it's the only way how we can work on our perception and also on the emotive side without having really fear for our lives. Yeah? I can work on a lot of things, but it might be dangerous. So I can work, for example, on the perception of heat and keep my hand in the fire and try to perceive this heat. This is dangerous, as we know. We can also run until we break down. We can also then not breathe until we fall down. And these are just, the funny things, because there are much more, let's say, there are much more fields where we do this with our own neighbors and our own friends in order to have power, in order to create hierarchies, etc., etc. Yeah? So, and art might be the field where something totally existential can be done with non-existential, so not really existential consequences, thank you. Yeah. And so we have this field, we can do something totally serious without killing ourselves, which is good. Yeah? And this is maybe why we can do it. So, at the same time, art is just a playground for us. On the other hand side, everything that we do, every deviant, let's say, every deviant construction in art is really existential. Yeah? Because it gives something, it gives a new perspection, let's say not new, a specific one, into this field of our being, which gives us perspectives for that we are not in just the trained person. So, I have this, I have the training, and now we can just maybe make some thoughts of how can we bring these things into a compositional technique. Yeah? Let's just turn it upside down. Yeah? I want to have a sound. Yeah? So I'm building material. Yeah? I'm building a material, and now let's make this game, just turn it upside down. Yeah? And we are, I think, more or less all composers, semi-composer, or yes, yeah. Let's see. Yeah? But you all know what, for example, a rough sound is. Yeah? We might have now different rough sounds, but I assume that this rough sound will be quite similar. So we share a big knowledge about what is rough. And then I can say, okay, I can build a sound which is rough, which might have a specific semantic field. Let's say it's a warning sound, or it's in a specific environment which has a specific spatial connotation. So it might be in our spatial sense low, rough, and let's call it a kind of a specific warning. Then we all build this sound. So from this on, and if I make a combination of all these things, I can either come to sounds that we know. If I say quite high with not too rough, but rough tactility in a cultural and semantic field that is warning and that is a warn sound, that has then the environment of a hospital, we all know what the sound is. Because it's the siren of an ambulance. And if I make those relations in a deviant way, then I can create sounds out of our knowledge which are not fulfilling the expectations of maybe one of the given modal fields. So I can come to a specific either sound or even better relation of sounds by reorganizing how we understand any perceptive input. And starting from there, it was for me quite a big relief, because I do not need anything for composing, because my perception is enough. Of course, I have to say I am my laboratory rat. So I'm just thinking from here. Of course, when we are talking about culture, I have to say that I lived in, that I can maybe, by living in them for quite a time, assume, this is clear, but this is, I think, for all of us, that we are in a culture, we can overcome our culture, we can broaden our knowledge, but I'm not able to say anything about a culture that I did never lived in. That is clear. So we have to be exclusive in order to make something that, but I think we share, not all, but I think there is quite a large field of human activities where we share this. So at first I can build material by turning upside down how I understand the perception. Second, I can re-relate given sounds in order to, by re-relating these modalities, in order to get relations that are not fulfilling the picture of, let's say, the given relations that are there. We all have to know why I'm talking about relations. We are obliged to make relations between anything. This is something that we cannot, this is our human, let's say, this is our humanity, we have to make relations. And even between things that are not related, we relate them, and in the negative dialectics we say not relation is also a strong relation. So we cannot. So when we hear something, we relate it. And what at least I, and to some of you, we discussed this, I said, I want to hear your music not to hear my relations, which are as strong as yours. I want to hear the specific relations that composers are able to create, and that's at least in my idea the making sense of a composition, to get your relations. The given ones, they're there. Slightly different between all of us, but they're there. Okay, so that I can re-relate these either given sounds or a material that I create out of this aspect. What you see now is that when I'm doing this, there is no material. I do not use a material. I do not take something, but I have to create it at first. Even a normal, as you heard, flute sounds, and there are a lot of normal flute sounds, has to be related in terms of the environment he builds or he creates. That sound? Okay, is created. Let's do it like this. Yeah? So I have two directions. I can, as we might know it from the early electronic music, when via sound synthesia they build sounds out of sine waves. Yeah? I can build a sound, for example, or I can work on given sounds by re-relating them. And these two directions are always present at the same time. Yeah? Because this is the way how a relation then is done. Of course, every piece then and every project has its specific framework on which kind of relations I'm working on, because I will not work on the whole world, which is always present in us, but I'm taking frameworks. Yeah? So making of intimacy is working on a specific sound, let's say field, which is connected to what is, let's say, touched a little bit by this metaphor of intimacy. Yeah, so sounds or a kind of experience which is very, very near, very close, a bit far from words. Yeah, that is also or seems to be very subjective, very individual. Yeah? But as we know, or as I said before, it is not. Yeah? Just for some examples, for example. If somebody died, I feel it fantastic that our societies found ways of mourning, of overcoming this kind of deuce. What is Trauer in English? Grief. Yeah. Okay. And there are in the Alps there were mourning women. Yeah? They were paid for weeping. Yeah? That's fantastic. Yeah? So the others they didn't have to weep. Yeah? And it was clear how you react. Yeah? And so when we see somebody crying, we assume a specific sort of imagination, and then it's just of experience, and then it needs one more thing maybe to define it. If you see a dead body and somebody weeping, it's clear. If you see a black flag and somebody weeping, it's clear. In our context, in the European context, you hear somebody crying and hear one bell, it's clear what happens. So strong are connected the elements together, and these are the given elements. Now, think of a bell, just a single bell, and then reconnect it in this way. So this kind of death bell that we have, for example, in the Alps, which is very strong. I think every culture might have its own singular things like this, is then connected to something different. If I have this death bell, which in some fields has a very, it's a high, small bell, and then you hear cowbells, like in Mahler 6, the environment is totally different. It's about bells. It's not about the death and the cows, it's about the bells. Okay, I have bells here, I have bells there, and then I might have also, I don't know, a bell in a film with a butler, etc., etc. So and we have totally different environmental settings, which are represented by sounds that are connected by something very, very, very banal, and that's similarity. Similarity is the most banal connection that we can do. Tactility one is more differentiated, etc. So you understand, I hope you understand what all from this simple graphic, from the simple idea, what the consequences are. Okay, so I make sounds and relations, so I build a material and I build relations. What I have to do is to build, this is what I have to do is I'm talking to myself, to build sufficiently deviant relations so that the relations that I am building are at least as strong as the ones given, and they can, let's say, override those relations in order to get some kind of specificness. And this specificness is what I think makes a piece of art or anything, a person, interesting. And so this is maybe the first step that we can take. And if we now assume that, and I will maybe talk then about a specific sort of material and a specific sort of relations. If we have this, then we can go into a next step, and the next step would be, okay, and now I have the material and then I have the relations, and what's following? Because that's not music, that's a kind of, okay, that's an assemblage of some materials and maybe relations. But then we have to talk maybe about also some other categories that are necessary for music. And where am I? Okay. I will now give you two examples of what I was talking about, two different ways of at first creating material and then creating relations. I wrote a piece which is called Semantical Investigations, maybe some of you heard it, and the first one starts with the sound of a bike bell. The project was just about no musical sounds given, just the sounds that are leading us through our day, from an alarm clock to bells to sirens to all these warning sounds. The project was just the musical sounds. They are so well known to me, I don't like them anymore. Let's try to do something on the sounds that we, or maybe at least also me, there is no question of liking them or not liking them. They are leading me through my day. They are even enforcing me to do something especially. So there is a specific social quality on these sounds because they are powerful. And if I'm not jumping out of the way, if a car is warning me, it's my problem. And also the problem of the others. So it's not just my problem, but we are also talking about others. I have chosen for the starting sound a bike bell, and it is a specific bike bell. It's not a bing bing bike bell, but it's a ring bike bell. Maybe you can now say, okay, that's the bike bell because I had it in as a child. It's a decision. But I can show you from here how this and the observation of our perception is leading to a specific material. So I have this, I'm calling it ring ring, okay? And now I can make one relation, which is the most easygoing relation, which I was similarity, Verzeihung, similarity, and you all will find sounds that are quite similar. No problem, I assume. So we have a pitch, we have the ring ring, we have metal, and then it's quite clear that we have maybe a drum drum on a small bell. We might do it on crotales. If we go further, we might put it on maybe a piano or on a guitar, etc., etc. Okay. That's easygoing. What is not so easygoing if I'm then making these relations also on one of our major layers for music. If this is, this is a pitch, yeah? And every bell has a pitch with its spectrum, and I'm now projecting this pitch on 2 pitches, on 3 pitches, and something else. Yeah? The 3 pitches, I projected it on 3 pitches because in a cultural field we have those bells in church which organize 3 or 4 bells that we are ringing when Wandlung, that's what in English, when when blood gets to wine and the body of Christ gets to them, and we ring, so the ministrants, they are ringing this bell. And these bells are in triads. So it's a cultural sign that I get, maybe quite a specific one. I'm not sure. I found it in Austria, Germany, and also in Switzerland. I'm not sure if it's also existing in Spain. I didn't find it in Spain, so it seems to be a quite specific, but it has something to do. But this aspect, gave me the possibility to organize something bell-like on a guitar. So the guitar that I had wasn't a guitar; it was a strange stringed bell. This is the similarity. Then I said in the second layer of my building material and making relations, okay, I'm finding this bell in a specific semantic field. This bell is normally a warning bell. I neglect now that friends are ringing the bell if they meet each other. I neglect these things because the bell wasn't there for saying hello to a friend. So it's a warning sign. And what I simply can do is I can make a row of warning signs that I also have in mind. So the other warning signs might be a horn, a car horn, sirens, maybe, those those loud things that we have, these buzzers that we have in large factories, etc., and so on and so on. And what you see is that from one given sound, I suddenly get a sound, a higher guitar in a triad, and a siren. They have nothing to do with each other acoustically, but in the way how they are on 2 levels, inside specific and also well-known relations, they are suddenly connected. Then there is, of course, a third one, which was the environmental, as far as I remember. And the environmental is quite clear. I could then integrate into these relations all the street sounds that we all know. I didn't specify on which cultural street, but it's of course parts of these horns, parts of these sounds, but also then sounds of people walking, motor elements, etc. And a fourth one, which was massively important for me, is the one, I called it the mimetizing relation. So how a sound is mimetized, because we have different ways of mimetizing those sounds. And the one which is then very important was that where a sound appears, so the medium where it appears, gives the sound a different shape, gives it a different meaning. So if I have the same sound, then in a sample, this sound will talk about something different. And as you know, within the samples I can have some difference of them, etc., etc. So, and I can also have other forms of mimicking and mimetizing these sounds, as mimetizing them in, for example, the percussion instruments. Yeah? I take the bike bell as a percussion instrument and now find mimetizing instruments in the percussion that build a kind of a relation and a kind of a sound series, yeah, that integrates these sounds. As you know, the big parts of the percussion instruments that we use in the European cultural music, let's call it like this, but also in film music, are built from mimicking sounds. Tubular bells, one example. Tubular bells are not so nice, but they are the closest that we could get in the beginning of the 20th century to church bells, because church bells, they were too big to bring into a concert house or something like that. And you all know many of them. Yeah. Okay, and what you see now is that from one single sound, I have at least, and in the piece, for the first 10 bars, I decided to have those relations, yeah, that are organizing a sound material in for, let's say, 10 or even longer, but it's for these bars. What does it mean? I can now, for the further aspect now, yeah, how to organize these sounds. If I have different layers of making relations, I'm quite fast in thinking, okay, I can have the different layers and the different relations at one after the other, nice, or I can have them together, meaning that it is a kind of a polyphony of relations. Yeah? So that from one single element, I create a specific polyphony of relations of these sounds. So you can then think of there is a voice which works these sounds out on similarity, one that works a semantic aspect out, and one that works environmental aspect. Yeah? And so it's a three-part invention, if you want. Of course, the whole thing, the whole aspect of polyphony is far away from what we know from polyphony, from Bach's polyphony, also from, from polyphonic ideas that that we have present from the last, let's say, 50 years. Yeah? I see it more, if I might allow this kind of metaphor, as if we could see a three-dimensional object, maybe a sculpture, at the same time from different angles, and at the same time changing the angles in different times. It's a little complicated, but that's how I feel, or how I imagine this kind of polyphony. What I now could do, I could just play you the first 10 bars. Do you want to hear them? Yeah. As it might be clear, the ensemble then is not really an ensemble, but it's a kind of it has been transformed to representations of something totally different, which we do not know. The sources, I assume they are clear, but and then there, of course, are specific, or there are transformation work that I will be talking a little later. So this is the one side. Yeah. The second side that I was talking about, that I can start not from a banal sound. Maybe I have to add just a little bit talking about banality. Yeah? I love banality. I love the too well-known, which the sounds where we do not listen anymore. Yeah? Why? Because they are so deep in our unconscious, and they are leading us, because we have no more, we have no tentacles to these too banal sounds to do something with them. They are just there. So they have the strongest and the most powerful and hierarchical means on us, because we have nearly no means to work on them, to transform them. The more banal something is, the stronger it is. That's horrible, no? Well, this is, and why? And thus I feel it horrible. And it's really making me a little frightened. That's why I have to work on it, yeah? So, the banal things are much more interesting for me than the wonderful jewelry of contemporary music. Yeah? Because the jewelries, they seem to... We have to have taken so many steps to perceive them. Yeah? And if the jewelries then sink down and get banality, then it's a morphology of contemporary music. And to some of you, I was also speaking about the Alberti basis of contemporary music. Yeah? So it's no more jewelry, it's just there. So the banal gives us so much information if we read it correctly over us, and then we need to do a lot to work on it. Yeah? The other thing, the other possibility of gaining material and gaining also relations is if I start from a very specific sensation. Yeah? I will give you one sensation because I also have a quite clear example, and that's the first song of the sad songs, which is called Hurt. Yeah. So, sorry, I have some pain sounds. Maybe you also have heard, I've written 3 string quartets on the most painful things that we can think of, which on the other hand side created the most wonderful pieces of art, that is flaying. And you maybe know the flaying of Marsyas of Tizian, which is one of the most incredible, and it's a painting just wonderful, but it's the most cruel thing that we can think of. This is a slicing, and maybe you also know and mainly the crucifixion of Grünewald, yeah, which is an artwork with a body with the most cruelty and painfully tortured body besides Marsyas. And the third one is Reißen, so tearing. Of course, why these sensations? Yeah? We all have a very clear picture of these sensations. We all had some pain somewhere. It's just like it. Yeah? And the older you get, you will perceive it. It's not getting better. Yeah? So it's part of our life, and it's connected also to our sensual and also to our acoustical world. There are a lot of painful sounds. Yeah? We know them. Yeah? If I would have a blackboard here, and you know the sound when a nail is going over a blackboard, didn't you? It's a sound which is inscribed in my body from childhood, yeah? And I even have to think about these sounds, and I feel the same, and I feel this kind of pain. Yeah? So these sounds are inscribed in our body, and from this now I can make a projection of possible sounds within, of course, a given instrumentation. The instrumentation is always important because deriving sounds or finding sounds or giving building relations is necessarily bound to an instrumentation due to its idiomatics. Yeah? Without an instrumentation, a given instrumentation, a specific way of making relations would not be possible. And in this instrumentation, it's a saxophone, it's an electric guitar, it's a percussion, and it's a keyboard. It's a piano. Excuse me. I can now, from the idiomatics of this instrument, derive sounds that are connected to a specific sensation of pain. Yeah? And there is a specific one that I was using I was working on quite a lot. This is something, very narrow intervals. And also, of course, everything might be quite high. Yeah? And then the glissando upwards is something that is connected to specific maybe sensation, which might be cutting or which might be, you know, slicing in the skin, and so on and so on. Yeah? These, what is now different than before, yeah? These, the sounds that I derive from are, of course, in a way subjective, because I will find them, maybe you will find them different ones. You will find maybe some sounds that are in the given instrumentation that are closer to your practice, or that you you know, because you have maybe also a different body. Nevertheless, I assume that the sounds will be more or less within a field. And now I have then a certain amount of sounds with which I can build a specific, let's say, environment, sound environment. This is the next step. Yeah? So you see, I can also go from one sensation or from a field of sensation and create material. The most important thing for me is to create a material, yeah? By enforcing specific and also different layers of relations. Yeah? There is no material given, it's created in a specific sense. And for this, I will also give you the beginning of the sad songs. One thing is very important. Yeah? If I'm deriving something out of pain, it's not in order to build a painful sound picture. It's not a program music, it's an inverted program music. It's not to make a picture, but it's to work on sounds that are related to a specific environment, sound space, or let's say also visual aspects, whatever. Yeah? And then I do something with the sounds. It's not about representation. This is important. Yeah? This is really what I do. I use the aspect of representation to, is it possible to de-representate something? Yeah? So to go to the sources, to the real aspects of the sound, in order to make them to be listened again. Yeah? We all can, you know, pain is nothing special. For the one who feels pain, yes, but it's a general aspect. Yeah? And now it's about having a specific sound environment and then working on sounds that are maybe related to it, but it's not about having pain. Maybe sometimes it goes a little bit, of course, also in this direction. So I give you just the first minutes of the first song of the sad songs for this instrumentation. Maybe for some of you it is clear why, for example, the pitches are as they are. I just give you one hint. If you have a semitone down, it's a kind of a sigh. This is an old picture that we have at least since 1400 something. Yeah? And it's connected to sighing, to this kind of field. Yeah? And so the whole field of harmonic, let's say, work is then organized by as well semantic and well-known element, but I hope so, redefined. Yeah? Okay, so I always forget to ask if there are questions, but I think you will tell me if there are questions. Yeah?
I just got a question about recording musical sounds.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if when you heard it live, then what your experience was.
Well, you know, my experience, it's so, you know, when, I don't know how it's for you, when you listen to your own music, to really have, you know, to be inside the music because I'm controlling it. And that's one of the biggest disadvantages of being a composer, that I assume that I cannot enjoy the music, or of course I have exactly that what you have while composing. Yeah. So this physical, this body, this kind of specific movements that we have when we have pain. Yeah, we are not. Oh, it's so cool, but there is a tension and it's binding and things are binding to. It's exactly this. Yeah.
I mean, if you hear fingers scraping down a blackboard, then it makes you and so
right.
Does it work the same with instruments live?
I think it's not the same, but maybe it's something congruent. Yeah, that's and live. Of course, this is what I've been heard. Yeah, so that the first electric guitar, which is in octaves, which are not really in tune due to the bottleneck. Yeah. Makes a kind of sensation like this in a quasi-unison with the piano with the glass. Yeah? It's kind of a bottleneck, and then having a glass box, which is where you hear broken glass hit, yeah? Which is automatically connected to the danger of being sliced or something, yeah. So that that is, of course, in this field, but then when you hear that the whole thing is suddenly given into a space by terms with transducer, and the same sounds get into a kind of a super large space, yeah, they change, of course, their sensitiveness, yeah, and also the sensations, yeah. And this is what I then meant by working on, so this kind of transformation, yeah. The next step that I wanted to talk about is, okay, we have the sounds now, yeah, good, but for music it needs also something more, yeah. So let's call it at first very pragmatic and very easygoing. We need to project these sounds into time. Yeah? So how do we do this, or how do I do this, in terms of, okay, this projection in time has also to be connected to this whole environmental setting that I'm doing. So if I'm idiomatic with my perception and with all the sensations, the projection in time has to have this connection to the sounds at first, as well as to a perception of them, and to also how we relate things. Yeah? And what this is my word for it. Yeah? What I try to do is to write purely non-tonal melodies. What does it mean? Purely non-tonal melodies, so that I have an A, a B, and a C, etc., yeah, which are connected to each other, but not in the gesture as we call normally melodies, one tone after the other, yeah, but as being specific elements, sound, gestalten, sound sources, or whatever, yeah. Because every melody of a single instrument is always, in fact, tonal. If I have I can use which tones ever. Yeah? That's a tonal gesture. Yeah? And so to rebuild something in a purely non-tonal way, I could also call it not a purely non-tonal melody, but I could also call it following structures. So what is the structure? That A follows B follows C. Because what happens when A and B come together, yeah, if on the border of them there is something happening. And this is my sign for energy. There is something happening. We don't know exactly what, yeah, but there is something happening, and then they build a kind of relation. Yeah? And if then these two, either B or the two, are coming to C, there is something happening. This is an energy 2, and then this is a relation 2, and this is the relation 3. Yeah? And that's what this kind of melodic work is about. And then I can find specific structures how to do it. I'll just give you some examples. If I'm organizing, as I wrote before, the sounds in a specific series, yeah? So a series, for example, of similarities. Yeah? I have sound 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah? This is not something that I invented, this is also something that Stockhausen, for example, did. Yeah? Then I can choose a specific order. I can choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can choose 6 and back. I can choose also the numbers of my cell phone number. I can choose the birthday of my partner, or I can choose everything. Or I structure it in order to make specific energies maybe being happening. So if I'm putting A and B as an A and as a non-A, so as far as possible away from each other, and then this, the following has to be, because it needs to be in one word, so that the relations have to be made clear, is a synthesia. Yeah? We have here then a relation of some kind. It's not an opposition, it's just far away, but within the given framework it might be as far away as possible, so meaning an opposition. And then those two are, the synthesia is relating to the two and binding the two together. Yeah? And so we get then something which, in my terms, and I also try to do this, is, and this is an important word is, or an important term, is a Gestalt. Yeah? And so I'm building Gestalt elements, yeah? Smaller ones, bigger ones, very big ones. So the whole piece might be one big Gestalt which is built out of smaller Gestalts until the very, very, very detailed small Gestalt that when you look at this code, they are easy to find out. Why is the concept of Gestalt so interesting in terms of time? I think for me, one of the most interesting and important things is that Gestalt makes us perceiving at least two experiences of time. Gestalt is, as everything, realizing itself in time. There is one element and there's another, so it's one after the other. Okay, yeah. But at the same time, Gestalt is under a fermata. So when the elements are strongly enough connected together, the Gestalt has maybe, and that's not easy, the possibility to be under the frame, under the quasi-fermata of time. The best example, which is very hard to achieve also in composition, is my sentence that I'm speaking now, because I'm not making the final word, because I make you be in the same, under the same big fermata of time. Thus, time is running and running and running, and I will continue for 2 minutes. Yeah, but for 2 minutes I might, if I have the ability, keep you under the framework of this fermata. Yeah? And now I made the dot. Yeah? So, and this is the aspect that I find really great, that it's not one sound after the other within a Gestalt, but sounds that are at the same time looking into the future and looking from the future back, and those which are present have their tentacles to the future and the present. And that's why for me the Gestalt principle is so important, because I think that this is how maybe, I'm not a specialist, but we maybe perceive also when we are in the present, so yeah, when something has its presence, because we at the same time perceive where it comes from and where it might go to. Yeah? And so this kind of Gestalt is then the technical way of how, on the smallest scale, to organize some sounds to each other. And when, for example, this is one Gestalt principle that is that has the advantage that one can apply it to a whole lot of relations and sound fields, because it has a little bit this kind of non-A synthesia, so the Hegelian thinking of the opposite needs a a synthesia, yeah? And it's the easiest one to talk about, yeah? Because all the other ones, yeah, there is a long list of them, are derived from the special field of interest that I have in a certain piece. So all these kinds of course, they are metaphors, yeah? And you know that the metaphors, we do not need the metaphors to find reason in the world, but we build the world out of metaphors. Here, there is one book that I really would propose to you. This is Metaphors That We Live by Johnson and Larkhoff, and they also wrote this phenomenal book of Philosophy in the Flesh, where maybe a quite bunch of these thoughts are also then, well, you get also the reasons, and that it's maybe not an invention of a composer who doesn't know anything about science and philosophy. Yeah? So, and this Gestalt, this is why I'm so keen on the Gestalt. Yeah? And then, as you know, then I can project the Gestalt into an X-Gestalt, so I can make, and then this can be an A, and after this I can make a non-A, and then I have a phrase, and then I have the same, and then I can continue. Yeah? And now to maybe the next layer, if I'm projecting this into time, yeah, I also, of course, have to deal with layers that are, let's call it purely musical. Yeah? Let's talk about those in a short time, about metric situations. Yeah? As you might have heard, there are sometimes moments in my music where the metric situation is really strong. There are moments where you will not find out any metron, yeah? And there are moments which are in between. Why is the metric, or why is a reference working on the metrics important? That's very simple, because since at least 1500 something, yeah, the metric situation, the metric counting is a musical counting. Yeah? For quite a long time, it was not just the metrics or the pulses, but it was also a hierarchy. And in the moment when metric situations got this power to be hierarchical. So, in tonality we have strong beats and weak beats. Yeah? And as you know, the whole work of Brahms is trying to get the weak beats stronger than the strong beats. So it's a battle. Yeah? And this is also a kind of a battle against tonality, but not on the field of tonality, but on the field of rhythm, of hierarchies of rhythm. So I will try to have a de-hierarchalization on the fields where the hierarchies are as strong, or where they are as at its strongest. Yeah? And repetition and pulse are the very strongest means for hierarchialize our perception. As I always also say, and some of you might heard it's no matter what you repeat. The repetition will be stronger than what you repeat. Yeah? After 2 or 3 repetitions, and I'm exaggerating, it doesn't matter what you repeat. I don't listen no more to what is repeated than to it is repeated. The repetition drives us into a mode of perception that it decreases the differentiations in order to increase the immersive aspect. No, you are going with me. Yeah? So it's a kind of this is it a manipulation or not? I don't know, but it has this kind of power. I don't know where this power comes from. We can make speculations, yeah? But it's an observation. And so, if I'm going on this level, I have to be aware about these strong, powerful hierarchializations, and they have to be present in order to be wiped out. Yeah? And so it is a necessity. Yeah? And then we can have a focus on specific sounds, and of course it makes something to the sounds if they are organized in a metric and repetitive way, or if the same sounds are organized in a totally different framework of time. Yeah? So this is a means of working on the sounds. Yeah? When I'm now talking about Gestalt and about this kind of aspects of time, then it's also necessary to talk about time as a mean of working on the sounds. Yeah? Time is not there, but we composers, we are kind of goddesses and gods of time, because we are creating a specific perception of time, yeah? By projecting sounds into the time. Yeah? And so time is articulating then something special, something specific, and time is transforming the sounds. Yeah? And now we can also go to, of course, the harmonic field. As you also heard, there are complex harmonic situations, there are really strange, easygoing harmonic situations that are really close to tonality. But in order to, for example, have the cadence, the most banal thing, reorganizing a material which is not fitting to the cadence. So in the sad songs, there is a situation, maybe you heard it, where these kind of cuttingly painful materials were creating a cadence. Yeah? Of course, it's a little bit by means of bottlenecks and glasses. It's a cadence which has drunk a little bit too much of alcohol. Yeah? But there is the cadence, and the cadence is then the banal thing. Is a means of, is a tool of transforming the sounds, or other way around. The sounds are transforming the cadence. I don't need to abandon the cadence, and I don't need to abandon the pulsating rhythms, but I can work on them, and this is the aspect where also then this kind of banalities are no more, at least for me and in my thinking, no more banalities, but they get a certain value, at least for me. Yeah. So, and what's the time? Well, we are, if I'm too fast, you have to tell me, because, you know, it's just, and I try to keep your eyes open, because the longer it goes, I know, the more problematic it's going to be. What I also said is that the whole music is polyphonic music. As I said before, it is polyphonic because at the same time there are different relations open concerning to material. Why? This is also very simple, because our perception is not a monophonic perception. We have a polyphonic perception. Yeah? I see him doing something while looking at you and listening to my speech. Yeah? So but of course in different layers. Yeah? And this is how we get this kind of four-dimensional, and you know, we can also then talk about the other dimensions. Maybe we are able to have 6 or 7 dimensions in our perception, but this is speculative, yeah? And we can work it out. What does it mean? Going back to the bike bell, when I make a polyphonic structure that is working on different layers of relations of this bike bell, yeah? I have the possibility to give you more information at the same time about how a possible relation and recontextualization of the bike bell is possible. Yeah? It's a possibility, yeah? And then you get more information. And I'm just about, well, I think we have to gain for the most, for a situation where there is as much information possible that we can give. Yeah? So I'm absolutely, as you might have seen, I'm not an economic composer. Yeah? I hate economies. and to be economic. Why? It's very simple, because this is something, when I give you the most, so much information possible, and I'm clever, no, maybe, then I know that I can focus on several ones to tell you, to work on the material under focused aspects. Yeah? But this is how you perceive the bike bell always. So it's again this reference to our everyday perception. Yeah? And then, of course, when I listen to the bike bell, in order to listen to it, then I will focus on a specific aspect. Yeah? As now, of course, we are all now focusing on specific aspects, yeah? As well all the others are present at the same time. Yeah? And as I was saying before, the polyphony gives me also the chance to have this kind of multidimensional, it's like a sensor, a multidimensional sensor at the same time on a more dimensional object as a sound object. Yeah? This is the idea. Yeah? Of course, within the piece, it's not going to stay like this. Yeah? Because one thing is for me that also in the work on a piece absolutely important, that I was talking about deviance before. And when I'm starting with a kind of a relation, yeah, of course, within a given framework, and I assume quite a short amount of time, this given framework is again the setting. It's framed, yeah, as the word framework means. So I'm again in the situation where we all are. I'm producing a framework. Okay, this is my garden, and now you can play in the garden, or I am playing in the garden, and it gets the same, and the things are as stiff and as unmobile as they might be, or as they are when we're just relying to our perception and sensation like this. So I have to start to be deviant and to transform the materials, the relations from the very first moment on. And that's something that I feel really totally necessary, that from the first moment on, the situation we are in is transformed. Otherwise, it gets again just the picture that we have, that we know, either that we have in society, that we know from ourselves, yeah? But I'm not giving you, or it's not about then experience something specific. And that's the way where the composing goes. So I have also to find transformation, and let's call it simply tools. Yeah? So in order to transform, I need tools, or I have to do something with the sounds. There is a wonderful interview with Giacometti. He is giving the interview and looking at the interview partner, and his fingers are always working on his sculpture. Yeah? And the sculpture gets higher and higher. Yeah? And it's fantastic. So it's a good picture for he has to do something. Yeah? And so then transformation means do something to the sounds. Yeah? I can be nice to the sounds, and I can also smash them, crash them, tear them apart, make them explode, etc., etc. Yeah? To the sounds, to the relations, to the whole environment, to the instrument, to whatever is given in the piece. Yeah? And so then you will see I have what I called a melody. Yeah? In this melody we have, let's call it Gestalten, and at the moment where I have two Gestalten, the third one will be transformed by a specific means. So these two need to be transformed in the third one. And this is now just again a list of transformation tools. I named some. I named those which we have normally in music, so we can transform by time, means that we can makes the time longer. One of the most wonderful aspects is, maybe you all know Nono string quartets, when he wrote a structure and then he put fermatas on it. Yeah? And in his given framework of time, it was an eighth note, but then he transformed it by a fermata of 7 seconds. And suddenly this went a 7 seconds fermata in PPPPP, which means the bow is no more stable and the sound is transformed. And of course, the whole logic of the phrase is totally different. Yeah? And he's extreme with this. Yeah? And if you go from the beginning of this string quartet, I think it needs 3 or 4 sounds, and then there is a huge long fermata. Yeah? So it's time, yeah, which, for example, make this kind of transformation. Of course, then we have all the other layers. We have dynamics. Yeah? If you think about something that we have a given framework and we extremize the dynamics, then it's a way of transformation. For me, quite important is the harmonic work. Yeah? Because it's so connected to our listening, it's so connected to the instruments. Yeah? So, because these instruments are, of course, all instruments that are built to produce a certain harmonic field and not a different one. Yeah? And then we can work on this in the way of that we change the harmonic environment. Yeah? And the tonality is one aspect of this. Huh? One of my very great examples from the past, yeah? If you would like to study the first Debussy etude, yeah? Where we have just the 5 fingers, and you will see that he has scales, all possible, for him possible scales, which are doable for 5, 4, and 3, and 2 fingers. Yeah? So, see white, black, whole tone, chromatic, modal versions, and then reducing it until the trill. Yeah? And this is no more tonality. Yeah? At some certain point, he decides to have C and G in the bass, and suddenly the whole thing is tonal. Yeah? But in the structure, it's absolutely not tonal, and this is maybe something from the very past, where we see how structurally modern Debussy was, of course, in the framework of a stylistic possibility of his time. Yeah? I think nobody can, or there are people who can jump out of time or who are never in their time. You know the examples maybe, but they are rare. Yeah? And their biography was not simple. Yeah? So harmonic, and now we can go on. Yeah? For example, if I would, as you just heard, if I am working on space, yeah, and in a specific setup, I increase the space. I have to find the means how, in a normal musical setup, I can make suddenly a huge space. I did it in the sad songs with a very simple means. I put on 2 tam-tams, or depends on the room, maybe also 4 transducers. And what is on the stage is then transformed into the space, and the tam-tams are enlarging the space until a huge space, and this is what was important for me, filtering the sounds of the quartet in the specific way of a tam-tam spectrum. Of course, the tam-tam then functions as a big cymbal that we again have also in the drums, and of course the speakers that are necessary to project the sound of, for example, the electric guitar. So you see that the idea of using the tam-tam with the transducers is a transformation of the given setup that is that we have in the group. And now I can go on and on and on with transformation tools. Yeah? The wonderful thing on transformation tools is that each project, and also if you are doing this, each of your project will find its own transformation tools. Yeah? Because of course, if you work with water, you need to have different transformation tools than if you work with wood. Yeah? There might be similarities, and this is great. Yeah? For example, fire is working with wood and water. Yeah? So there is a similar transformation tool that works for different materials, but doing totally different things to the materials. And now you can maybe find out of this metaphor your ideas how this could be possible in music. And this transformation is for me so important because, as I said before, it is so hard to define a sufficiently deviant sound, environment, relations, etc. from our knowledge. Especially, and we're, as you know, in a historically different situations than it was in the 50s, in the 60s, and in the 70s, where maybe we see on each step that by changing the morphology, also that it was a huge change in the structure of music, and of course also what has been done to music. Since at latest 75, and I just take this date randomly, we face different problems. We face the problems that the sounds and also all the sound world, which has once been contemporary music sound, is now a historical based sound world. So the sounds of the 70s, each multiphonic, scratching, all the Lachmann sound, all the Scherino sound, all the everything, is now historical material. So and we have just to face it. And so we are in a different situation. And this is just a means to get this idea of a sufficiently deviant relation to also my well-trained perception. So let's see where we are. Maybe I interrupt myself once more. Do you want to ask right now, or should I interrupt myself now? It's just up to you. Let's do the questions. Maybe we have a microphone that's.
What you said about the melodies, that you try to keep them, I think you said absolutely atonal.
Oh no, not absolutely, but what did I say? I don't know, but it was not absolutely, but purely or
maybe
something like that.
So the question is exactly about that, because in other, let's say, similar associations that I would have, like with meter and with cadences that you mentioned, you want to keep some things from, let's say, from the classical past, kind of, not as a taboo, but as material to play with, let's say. So why with melody, the tonal aspect still keeps this kind of taboo attitude in a way?
At first, I have no other chance than to keep things. This is because they are there. I would have to, make lobotomia to forget those things. And the purely non-tonal melody just means that this is a construction mode of elements after each other that are not referring to the gesture and to the principles of pitch organization with rhythm and etc. that we had in tonality. That what you mean, of course, the game coming closer and going further away from my Prägung, from my presets. This is something that has also something to do with facing, let's call it the truth of what I am, because I am all those presets. And so for being aware of all those presets, I also have to name them. And there is nothing bad about the presets. The only thing is, if I'm relying just on the presets, I'm running in a mainstream, and not just in music, but maybe, and we are not able to do it in all aspects, we have to go to Spar and buy some food because, as all our colleagues as well, because we are not able to make the course here and have the field outside and dig our own potatoes. Yeah, that's simply not possible. But in specific aspects, I think we can do it. And the field of art is thus so complex because it's the playground where we can do it. And relating to the presets, and also then letting them in a positive way be part of the game and not be the enemies, but they are part of the game, then they get worthy again. You know, they get something precious. A C major chord is something so either precious, banal, or odd, or wonderful, or whatever. It depends on the relations. And maybe, you know, those C major chords where you are really, wow. And also those C major chords in non-tonal music and new music where you're really, there are some, for example, in Sparlinger, it's not a C major, it's an A flat major in the vier Stücke. Suddenly there is but it's of course there are quotation, but it gives a different color, for example. Did I answer your question more or less?
I guess more than my question.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think you already answered my question too. So my question is about material. You said material and presets. Is it the same thing for you?
Well, when I'm talking about the material of a piece, I do not speak about the presets, but let's say the elements that I built. Yeah? And the elements, the specific elements that I built. The presets are those that I can observe. Yeah? For example, the presets would be what are the variations of a bell. Yeah? And within a given cultural framework, we all have the same variations of bell in the pitches, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? And from this on, I have, if I'm organizing them, I have to derive a specific material out of the question of what is the level of relating them. So I think
you built a conception, a unique conception, yeah? So
that's a good question. Of course, you know,
of relation.
Yes. So if you want to call it a concept of relation, yes, or a specific angle towards looking at the material, which is a specific, let's say, bringing a specific relation into this world, of course. So I can look at this world under a specific aspect, which means then either it's a concept or it's an idea. You know, we have those words that everybody will use according to his or her. Well, I don't use concept. You know, it's a very simple thing why I don't use concept, because I know concept art, and concept art for me is so great because it makes something and it suggests something which is just in my head. I love concept art when it's so consequent that I don't have to see it or hear it. It's just in my brain, yeah? But of course, and this what I do is necessarily bound to the aspect of listening, yeah? Without listening to the music, it would not be there. Yeah? It would not be possible because it needs to have this kind of experience. Yeah? And this is just the differentiation that I'm doing if I'm talking about the material of a piece and the presets that are given in our heads, in our experience, etc.
So there is no problem that the material could be historical?
No, it is historical. Every material is historical. There is no. So if I'm making a material, yeah, it's maybe no longer just historical, but of course it uses historical aspects. All what is given is historical, and the history is not the problem, because the history is at the same time a presence. It's not that history is just something, we have to know the history. No, it's our perceptive and sensational and emotive presence, the history. Yeah? And the more we know about our history, also in terms of politicalness, yeah? And the more we can have hands on it. Yeah? I didn't talk about something which is also very important for me. I call it then the politics of perception, because at the moment when I'm doing this kind of transformation on the listening, I think we prepare something that I also can then be a different agent in this field of world. So there is no different politics without a different perception. Maybe this is a reason why in societies and politics that are very strongly defined by a specific power, arts is often dangerous, especially when it gains a specific kind of social, let's say, that it's seen in the social world. Yeah? That protects us in the contemporary music world a little bit, because we're totally unimportant. We're unimportant nerds, yeah, that are doing something. Yeah, they are using quite a lot of money, but what we are not Ai Weiwei. Yeah, you can do any kind of music, yeah, as long as we do not, let's say, be important in this society. But of course, it's also a disadvantage that we are not important. Yeah, or I'm exaggerating it now a little bit. Yeah? So the being unimportant is the protection and is our problem at the same time. Yeah? But we cannot get more important by getting closer to the society. So by, let's say, making more popular thing, because then we lose our importance, because then we change nothing. Yeah? Then we are just variations of the given. And that's really hard, to be not a variation of the given and seen and heard is, this also has something to do with the environment. We have not so much influence on it. Yeah? We just can do our work, be as, as supportive to ourselves and to the others. Ourselves means our environment and to the others. Yeah? And we will not persuade somebody to love us. This is not possibly contemporary music and in no other field.